all join palms. And repeat after me. I take refuge in the Buddha. I take refuge in the Dharma. I take refuge in the Sangha. Keeping the palms joined. Put the palms down. All right, good morning, everybody. Good morning. Nice to see you all. Thanks for showing up and being here. It's funny. I always, how many of you here for the very first time, brand new? All right, cool. I just always want to know how much I have to tailor myself. No pun intended on the name Taylor. Just one hand, right? All right, cool. There's a lot of new people, and I tend to try to be nicer. But when you've all been here before, I just try to cut right into it. I know, I'm sorry. So most of you know me, many of you pretty well, some of you not at all. But I don't prepare for this stuff. I just sit down and whatever comes out, comes out. And, it's been that way for 17 years. And very often when I sit down, there's just nothing that I want to talk about. And so I just start rambling or I'll give you some secrets into some tricks into my mind, right? If I say, so who's here for the first time and, or I throw some question out at you, that means I've got really nothing I want to say. And then I just let you all share and then I let that trigger something. I'm like, oh, okay, that's where I'm going right now. And then sometimes I sit down and there's just so much nonsense going on that I have to decide, what do I want to talk about first, And when I say nonsense, I mean just stuff with people. And what I use as my model for life and my practice is the three poisons. In Buddhism, this is greed, anger, and ignorance. How many of you in this room have greed, anger, ignorance? Every single hand is up in this room, okay? How many of you all come here? It wasn't a trick question. But there's my point, right? You all raised your hands, and I said, how many of you all come here? Not one hand went up. So what we open our doors to every single day for 17 years is a place for people who are greedy, people who are angry, and people who are ignorant. You all just admitted to that. I'm using your hands, right? If your hand didn't go up, then you are excluded from that statement, right? But that's what we open up our doors to. And who's been leading this place for 17 years? This guy, who's greedy, angry, and ignorant. This guy. Wow, what a fun place. And so what that means is sometimes there's just an overwhelming sense of that going on. And someone said to me recently, Jeff, I bet all you do is spend all day long trying to put out fires at that temple. And I said, no, I spend all day long trying to prevent them. Very different. How do we prevent them? We practice. We look at our levels of greed. We look at our levels of anger. We look at our levels of ignorance. And some people are okay with that. Some aren't. They just aren't. And if this practice enters your life and you're not okay or ready or wanting to look at your own greed, anger, and ignorance, then this practice is not for you. It's really clear. You know, that would be like going to McDonald's and looking up the menu for 20 minutes and saying, I'll take pizza. We don't serve pizza, but I want pizza. Well, you're at McDonald's. Last I checked. I mean, no, is there any McDonald's in the world that serves pizza? Because if there is, I would go. I just want to know. But last I checked, McDonald's doesn't serve pizza. It serves McDonald's, right? This isn't a plug for McDonald's, but you get my point. And so that requires us to look at what we're learning. And in everything we do here, all this stuff, it's not easy. It's not fun. It's what I say every single time. This practice is not easy. It's not fun. It requires effort. It requires honesty. It requires integrity. These things are important with practice. And when we do that with Sangha, it's a beautiful opportunity to recognize where have we maybe caused harm within ourselves and in the community. Where have we maybe put people in really uncomfortable situations? Where have we really hurt somebody's livelihood? We have to look at that stuff because that plays out in places like this. It really does. And the last piece I'll touch on to tie this together, in Buddhism, they're called Dharma protectors. And some of you maybe have heard that term before, some of you maybe it's your first time, but a lot of very kind of traditional Buddhist temples, you'll see Buddhist statues and things like that. And then you see these other things. And, you know, different cultures portray them differently. But in many ways, they kind of look like warriors. And they're fierce. They don't look pleasant. They don't look like you want to go up and give them a hug. You know? They're there to protect the space. Because for 2,500 years, Buddhism opens its doors and hearts and minds to people who are suffering. And so Dharma protectors, metaphorically or literally, have to do what they do to keep Sanghas safe and protected. And this means you're going to piss people off sometimes. It's going to happen. Absolutely. The fact that I've only pissed off probably less than 20 people in 17 years, that alone is a miracle, right? I used to piss off 20 people in 5 minutes for most of my life. So the fact that it's like under 20 in 17 years, I'm pretty proud of that, right? You've known me 45 years. Yeah? So Dharma protectors are critical. And I'll just say this, and you know, Maggie and I have been running this place every single day for nearly 17 years. And we will always do what is necessary to keep this safe space, to keep this a Sangha that all of you are comfortable coming to. That's our role. That's it. I don't sit here because I think I'm some, you know, enlightened Buddhist person. Those of you who know me know I'm always very candid and open about my own greed, anger, and ignorance. Never denying any of that. Never presenting to be anything different from that. What I'm also very clear on is when things occur that are unhealthy or unsafe, it must be addressed. Otherwise, it trickles into the rest of the community. And that becomes a serious problem. And then other people become unsafe. And it can be physical things like the way cushions are placed, right? Returning cushions to the right place is important so people don't trip. Clearing space with shoes and chairs is important so those who need access have access. Throwing trash away. These things are important. Every little aspect of caring for this temple is important. And it gets overlooked by 95% of the people that come here, truly. And we're okay with it. We're used to that. That's our role. But it doesn't mean every so often I can't ruffle the feathers a little bit and remind people that this place requires people to really step up and take care of this space. And ask yourself, honestly, what are you doing or not doing? in regards to keeping this a safe space. This stuff is so important. And the last thing I'll say is, these are not the fun parts to Buddhist practice, but they're also the most critical, right? 6 paramitas: generosity, morality, patience, diligence, concentration, and wisdom. Concentration towards the end. Eightfold Path: views, thoughts, speech, action, livelihood, effort, mindfulness, concentration towards the end. Morality, honesty, those are in the front. So, however that sits with all of you, that's how it sits. If that makes you feel like, ugh, I just feel like there's a dagger in my heart right now, then that's what you sit with. If you're sitting there wondering, like, what is he even talking about? Then that's what you sit with. And that'll really be no different than anything else I say. But I often feel very called to give this talk. And I'm giving it lightly today as an introduction. So, yeah, thanks all for showing up. We'll start with the meditation practice. To those of you who are joining virtually, oh, Kevin, good. I'm glad you're here because I was speaking directly to you. So I'm glad you're joining us. Thanks all for being here virtually as well. Feel free to say hello as you are. For meditation, a couple things to tell you before we begin. Nothing's going to happen to you. You're not going to float away. You're not going to have any mystical, magical experiences. The mind that races all day long is not going to shut off. Don't judge your practice. I mean, you don't ask yourself, is this working or not working? Are you doing it right or wrong? We're just going to sit. We're going to breathe. You'll hear sounds inside, sounds outside. This is life. Life is filled with chaos. The practice of meditation is learning to get quiet and still within all of the chaos. Posture, you do want to be comfortable. If you're on a cushion, often help slide to the front third. Pushing the stomach forward allows the back to straighten. Shoulders are relaxed. Hands can be on the knees or lap. I'll guide us as we begin, and we'll settle into a little bit of silence. And starting with the eyes closed, if comfortable, or slightly open. Mouth is open or closed. We'll start with taking 3 deep breaths, slowly. And eventually, settle into a natural rhythm of the breath. Noticing the mind as it wanders, jumping from thought to thought. Start with gently guiding the attention, focus to the stomach or chest. Breathing in, feel them rise. Breathing out, they fall. Simply continue this practice, observing sensation of breath. As the mind wanders, lost in thought, recognize it. Release that thought. Return attention, focus to the breath. Breathing in. Follow breath in. Breathing out. Follow breath out. Learning to be comfortable in stillness, in quiet. Simply sitting, breathing. body still, rested. And the speech quiet, aware of all sound. And the mind learning to settle. Know what it's like to just sit and breathe. Knowing with each breath, there's nothing else to do. Nowhere else to go. And no one else to be. Everything beautiful, exactly as it is. Sitting, breathing. Once again, taking 3 deep breaths, slowly. As you slowly open the eyes, slowly beginning to move. The most important with the practice of meditation is to recognize how you feel now, immediately after. Compare this to how you typically feel throughout your day. Recognize the difference, if there is one. Ask yourselves how you prefer to feel every day for the rest of your life. And realize however you feel now, if it's quiet, calm, and still, or a busy mind, racing mind, whatever you're sitting with at this moment, has nothing to do with anything I said. It's not from how we sit and hold the hands across the legs. It's not from the sounds around us or anything else for that matter. It's everything to do with your own mind, your own mind's reaction to an external condition. This is what the Buddha called pratitya samuppada, dependent origination. This is the basis of the Buddha's awakening. The word Buddha simply means awaken. He was a human being who began to understand why we suffer. Why we get angry, sad, depressed, stressed, anxious. You begin to understand the causal relationship of all phenomena. What that means for all of us is, regardless of where we come from or what we believe in, where we think we're going, our whole life is filled with things that happen. We react. More stuff happens. More reactions. That's it. This practice is simply learning what it's like to respond to something quietly, peacefully, still. Because for most of us, the way you responded to the last 20 minutes is quite different from how you respond to everything else that's happening throughout your day. So all we're working on is closing the gap to where the way you feel now is closer to how you feel always. Just as driven, motivated, productive, successful. Whatever that means to you in your respective lives. But with a mind that's steady, clear, focused, distracted by nothing, disturbed by no one. This practice is not easy. It's not always fun. It's not an escape, as often people think it is. It is direct perception into the present moment. And our life is filled with present moments that are really uncomfortable. And this practice is learning to be with those moments as they arise. Too often we turn to someone or something to make everything better. Put our faith and our hope that someone else is going to make all our problems go away. But the reality is someone else didn't cause your problems and didn't create your problems. We did that all on our own. The beauty of that is we get to work on fixing them, understanding them, seeing what we cling to, who we attach to, how stuck we are in our views. And this practice is about challenging those. That's where it's difficult. Meditation is free. Buddhist practice is free. Sitting, breathing, becoming aware of what you think, what you say, and what you do. Always. Once we stop trying to change, fix, control, manipulate everyone around us, which is where we spend so much of our time, hoping they do this, wishing they do that, trying to get them to do this, trying to get them to do that, wondering why they did this. We spend so much time messing with other people. As I like to say, take care of your own mess before you bring that to somebody else, because they already have a mess. They don't need yours also. So with that, I'll pause. Always just preferring to respond to questions, meditation, Buddhist practice, anything you're sitting with, and we'll use the rest of our brief time this morning, and I'll respond to whatever's on your mind. And again, for those who are joining virtually, welcome. Glad you're here. Feel free to, if you have any thoughts or questions, put them on the chat box somewhere on your screen, and I'll do my best to respond as well. So, thoughts, questions? Hi, Joe.
So myself has been pondering the concept of non-self. So since this is an advanced group, maybe you can address how does the self get an understanding of a non-self?
Absolutely.
Does the question make sense?
And the question makes complete sense. How does the self get the understanding of the non-self?
Yeah.
Next question.
No answer.
That's That's tough to follow up.
Sorry, didn't mean to put the pressure on you.
Well, I'm sitting with the idea of compassion
Yeah.
for myself and other people. And your introduction really reminded me of my own path that got me here. So anger is my brand. And I used to pass it off as, well, I'm just from Philadelphia. Right.
You're just from where? I just want to make sure everybody heard that. Philadelphia.
And about 5 years ago, my then 6-year-old, I snapped at him and I apologized, and he said, "That's okay, you're just the angry mom." And whoo, did that start me on a journey?
Yeah.
Right? Therapy. And then I realized all that anger that was coming out was really because I didn't want to sit with the anger I had about myself.
Yeah.
And I could not, before now, have ever come here and sat here in a room and be still with myself. And because I would have been uncomfortable, number one, with sitting with that, but also the reason why I would have been uncomfortable would have been everybody else's fault. So it's been a very long journey. And I just felt like in the beginning, as you said, you can come in here and this not be for you. And it really made me realize, for me at least, right place, right time. There was a lot of work that had to happen. Somebody, I think last week, had mentioned they're in a place where they feel like their life is falling apart and they're losing kind of the people.
Yeah.
I'm in my third time of that in my life. And I can look back at the other 2 times and I understand them and I accept them and I see the value of them. But when you're in the middle of it, and this has been a real gift to me to be in a place where this can really help me, where this is, I really do see how 5 years ago, no way. And my second time here was the half day of silence.
Yeah.
And when I got to the end of that and I thought, this maybe is one of the most beautiful things I've ever done for myself, I thought, I think I found something. So I'm inspired. I just wanted to share that.
Yeah, thank you.
When I come in, the sense of community was immediate from day one. It's a comfort. It's a strength. I think about it in between.
Yeah.
So I just want to thank everybody. Thank you.
Yeah.
Just kind of share that the right place, right time is so important.
Yeah, I appreciate that on, endless levels and just a few thoughts in response to what you said. One, how many years ago was it where your son said? 5 years ago, your 6-year-old son said, "You're just the angry mom," right? And you saying that triggered the start. There's so many beautiful things in what you said, and I had always intended, even in my response to Joe, who was from Philadelphia, ironically enough, about non-self. I wanted to, whatever the next question was, I was going to bring it back to that. But the description you just gave is, in many waid, without you even knowing it, the practice of non-self. In a sense that you just said, I think, if I'm not mistaken, this is the third go-around that you're everything is crashing around you, everything is crumbling. Congratulations.
I wanted to tell that person who was here, and I don't know if she is here, the beauty that's on the other side of that.
Absolutely.
You can't imagine it, and when you get there, you know the journey was worth it. I at least have that experience that, hold on, I know it's there. And
when we're going through it, it's really painful, and it really hurts. And so the practice of non-self is to recognize that idea of you that you think is crumbling is not you. It's just an entire life's story. And in that moment, an accumulation of stories about who you think you are and what you think you're losing and what you think is crumbling, that construct that you've given yourself is who you are creating yourself to be in that moment. But then that all crumbles, and then you're somewhere else with other people in different places and different friends. And so where is the self? To ponder the self is meaningless. Because you're absolutely right. If there is no self, what self is there to ponder? There is no answer to that question. The answer is that question. Yeah? But the practice of it is to begin to understand that what you say is shattering and what you say you're losing and what you say is crumbling isn't you at all. It's actually part of the spiritual process of removing unhealthy people, places, and things from your life. And most importantly, trying to not add in that process additional unhealthy people, places, and things into your life. Because that'll happen. As we break through some stage of our life and we think we're on this like spiritual journey, we're like, okay, I'm doing okay. And then people stop showing up, and then they add a bunch of negative people, places, and things in their life. And then a year later, they're like, everything's falling apart. I'm back. It's like, well, everything is falling apart because you just added all this mess and stuff into your life. That's great. I mean, I'm just rambling, but I think what he said is really, really beautiful, really brilliant. And the last thing I'll say on that is, I can't even tell you how many times I've encountered this in, my 20 years of being around Sangha. Is it's not for everybody, and that's exactly what you just said. 5 years ago, there wasn't a chance, and you know what? You'd have been sitting here right now, like you said. You wouldn't have liked not liked, those are my words, but you wouldn't have been comfortable with all the people in here, and you wouldn't have been comfortable with sitting with yourself. This practice is not for everybody. And the danger is when we try to enter this path of this practice, and I see this constantly, if we're not ready for it, we create chaos. Because then it's everybody else's fault that we're not ready to do this. So we only come into this path and practice when we're ready. There's a great Zen expression that says when the student is ready, the teacher appears. And I don't mean that in context of teacher students. I use the word students as all of us, and I use the word teacher as Sangha, as community, as this space. So when we're ready, the space appears for us. And if we're not ready, we will just kick and scream and fight against it. Like a good Philly person would do. So thank you for sharing. Other thoughts, questions? Yeah, in the back.
So I'm kind of happy to be in the company of some great people.
Yeah.
I'm kind of dealing with an issue myself. So I have a conflict of motivations going into something. I recently moved out of a situation to a new apartment, and I realized my old landlord was screwing me over pretty hard. There was a landlord tenant law, basically we back to rent.
I don't need details. I don't want details. If you watch Judge Judy, cut to the chase.
I want to advocate for my neighbors and tell them that they may have been screwed over by the landlord. These are poor people. They might have gotten cheated just like I was.
Okay, got it. I don't want details.
My motivation there, I want to help these people out, but I'm also really angry at the landlord.
Yeah, okay, got it, done. Enough, thank you. What I hear is you are really attached and angry, and you need to be, I suggest you be very careful about justifying your angelship in the effort to save everybody else, while the heart of what you just said 6 times is your anger towards your nasty landlord. So, take care of your own mess. Yeah, this is very common in various ways, in a sense that we're very good at lying to ourselves and tricking ourselves and convincing ourselves that we're doing things that are noble and just. I'm not saying you're not. This is a general statement to everybody because your question applies to every person in this room in many areas of our lives, right? And your neighbors have their lives. They lived just fine before without you, and they'll live just fine after without you. I would suggest being very careful of what you think you're, saving. Everyone, as you are, I don't know details. I don't want details. Is going to pick and choose what they want to do. But it actually sounds like your anger is your issue. And I would address that by removing myself from a situation that's unhealthy and not continuously throwing myself back into it by giving some just, noble cause to it. Because that's what I hear. I'm sure that probably didn't sit well, but that's what I'm sitting with. Yeah. You want to tell your neighbor something? I don't know, send them a letter.
That's essentially the plan.
Yeah. But I think you need to take care of your anger. Because the landlord, 6 months from now, will be another person in your life that you're angry at.
Well, actually, right now, I kind of love my current landlord.
I'm not talking about landlords specifically. I'm just saying the people that we're angry at change. Landlord, family member, colleague, partner. People that we're angry at change constantly, and they always will. Explore why we're angry and what's going on with us that is triggering our anger. And, I have a hard time believing that our anger comes from anything other than we don't agree with what's happening. And we can fight with what's happening with kindness and compassion and love without anger. So, other questions? Yeah. Joe.
Is anger and ego connected?
Did you say is anger and ego connected?
Are they connected?
Yes, I think so.
Can you talk about ego?
Well, my ego would like to talk about my ego. Again, this is the practice of non-self. Zen teachings on Zen mind, beginner mind, leaving no trace, Shunryu Suzuki. Open one of those books. Read it, is my suggestion.
Well, I'll say this.
Hang on, you just asked the question. I'm talking.
I know.
Now your ego doesn't like my ego.
If you're going to read those books, I have some thoughts on that.
Of course you do. I didn't even say anything about them yet.
Go ahead.
No, please, you.
You go ahead.
No, I'm. Go right ahead.
Okay. Well, I've been reading a lot about. I've been reading about a lot about great people who influence the world.
Yeah.
Great scientists, great leaders, and one aspect of them is, or a great many of them, they're very, very large egos.
Yeah.
And the whole idea of minimizing your ego, which is an aspect of what I think should be. It just becomes confusing to me.
Yeah.
I'm wondering what your
So
thought is on that.
let me rephrase this a little bit. Our egos are not going away anytime soon. For me as a practitioner, I don't wake up every day and think, God, I mean, this was 20 years ago. I used to think, how am I going to shatter? But you've probably heard me talk about this over the years.
Oh.
I used to think at the beginning of Buddhist practice, well, how am I going to shatter my... I made this tie when I first started really practicing that this concept of self and ego
Right.
were the same thing. And I read, all 2 weeks of non-self, and I was like, okay, I'm going to get rid of myself. And by doing that, I thought I'm going to get rid of my ego. So there was myself and my ego saying, I'm going to get rid of myself and my ego. And that was the most ignorant view. What I began to recognize is I have a sense of self. It's an illusion. It's a story. It's not real. I have an ego. How can I use it? So I don't think anymore about shattering the ego, destroying the ego, or even necessarily minimizing the ego. But watch it. I agree that the people who've changed the world are brilliant. And many of them have huge egos. Many of them are absolutely insane. And they've changed the world. Many for the better, some for the worse. That's debatable on where you are. So for those who are sports fans in the room, there was an old, and I don't know if it was the Howard Cosell Monday Night Football who started it, but there's a common expression in sports where they're talking about, and it's typically with a football player, and they would say, you cannot stop him. You can only hope to contain him. I've always looked at the ego that way. I'm not stopping this ego. Are you kidding me? But how can I contain it? How can I use it? Can I use it for good? And be very careful with it. Because it can be very dangerous if you're not. Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Other thoughts? Yeah.
So I realized today that you can start one way in meditation. Like by the end of the meditation, I felt like, holy shit, I did not off. You know what I mean? Like I'm killing it. Like I'm starting to see the results of the practice, right? It's happening.
Yeah.
And then you ended it with like mind your mess. You know what I mean? And it hit me like a punch to the gut. Because I'm like, oh shit, I'm actually really messy. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So all that.
Great. Beautiful. I mean, there's no question you just shared.
Yeah.
And what you expressed is that initially you're like, I'll settle in, meditation, great. And I quote, you said, I'm killing it. Right? For those who didn't hear. And then at the end of meditation, it said something about being with your mess. And you're like, oh, I'm messy. I'm a mess. Be with that. Meditation isn't, especially initially, doing meditation doesn't mean you're not going to be a mess. If you do meditation and you're not aware of your mess, you're asleep. This practice is about being aware of our mess, 100%, and looking at it honestly. And then realizing, how does our mess impact everybody else, including ourselves? It starts with us. And again, coming back to the non-self piece, there's a great quote where it says, Dogen would say, you must get to know the self before you can get rid of the self. So you must get to know your own mess, your own madness, before you can remove it. And that can be painful. Right? It can be emotional. It'll break you down. It'll make you cry. It'll make you feel lost, hurt, sad. That's part of the spiritual journey. It's not this, oh, everything's wonderful now, I meditate. No. Yeah. Thanks for sharing. We'll do one more, probably. Yeah, maybe two. Go ahead.
What was the quote by Dogen you just said?
You must get to know the self before you get rid of the self.
Yeah, thanks for saying that. That really good. I was listening to Ramdas, some podcasts, and he was talking about when you come into this world, you're sort of like kind of clean slate, nobody. Then you go through somebody training, and then you go to like the nobody. But if you skip, a lot of people skip the somebody training, aka sort of spiritual bypass, and they think they can get get to the nobody, not self.
Yeah.
And I just keep on adding more and more layers of getting to know somebody. And I just want to share that. And this is the biggest part of my path to being able to really get to know the somebody in a grounded way is to take care of my body, because my nervous system has been just such a mess for a long time, and now it's getting much more grounded. And I can just see that, like, I just traveled for about 1.5 months, and I was in some like deep practices. I do pretty much Ashtanga yoga like every day. That helps me really reformatting my nervous system. But I got out of some of those practices, and when I came back to San Diego, I just felt very ungrounded in the past week. And in that feeling ungrounded, all the ego stuff just got amplified. And I realized to really just keep on getting to know and moving through some of this ego stuff, I personally have a real deep journey of having to be like really grounded in my body. Otherwise, I'm just like,
Yeah.
really entangled with the mind. So
Yeah.
thanks for saying that.
Yeah, no, appreciate you sharing that. I think it's a good reminder, really for all of us that, Buddhist practice, meditation, spiritual journey, whatever we call it, whatever that means to us, I suggest it not be this start and stop thing. It's continuous. It's your whole life. And I suggest not putting benchmarks, there, like achievement levels or successes or failures, no judgment on your spiritual journey. I think it's great you said you're killing it, but, even like removing that stuff from judging how our sitting and breathing was, and just staying at it consistent every day.
I wasn't killing it today.
No, and I think for me as a practitioner, I think anybody who shares this stuff, it's super critical to understand that for someone who shares it, we have to come from a place of like, we're working on this stuff no different than anybody else. That's why I'm always hesitant when people lead Buddhist stuff, because are they really working on it? Or are they just reading a bunch of stuff and then reciting it? Because that's not practice. And that's actually dangerous. So you really, when you practice it, when you share it, when you talk about it, like really make sure you're working on it. Not in a judgment way. I think the excitement of I'm killing it is fun once in a while, so I don't want to kill you're killing it. But anyways, anything else, thanks, before we close, any other final thoughts? Yeah.
Talking about the Sangha,
Yeah.
I've been practicing more at home meditation, and I'm also stalking you virtually. So if anyone ever needs to feel like be part of the Sangha and can't, hop online.
Yeah.
Go to YouTube, watch you. Yeah, I felt connected. I've been doing it for a few weeks, and it gives me that little extra week or extra night of connection to the Sangha.
Yeah.
So I encourage everyone to, if they can't, come or get connected virtually.
Yeah, it helps, and I appreciate you saying that, and especially, even during the pandemic, like in the height of it, and we were shut down for 18 months straight. So all we had was an empty room and the camera, and everybody around wherever they were. As I always joke and say, millions of followers on YouTube. So it really did for a lot of people. It kept them connected, and find ways to stay connected to a practice. It's super important. All right, so we'll close on that. We'll join palms. May the benefit of this practice be shared with all beings in all directions. May all beings be at peace. May all be free from suffering. May any merit gained be transferred to those who need it most. All right, just a few quick announcements before you head out. Thanks all for being here. My name is Jeff. I'm the Dharma Bum. We opened up this temple 17 years ago to introduce Buddhist practice to those who show up. Those of us who lead, we're not monks, we're not nuns, we're not gurus, we're not masters, we're not teachers, we're not looking for students. We're just practitioners. We do our best to take our understanding of Buddhist teachings and put it into terms that hopefully make sense to those who show up. Just about every night, different classes going on. We have a recovery sangha that meets a handful of times a week, and we're adding more to that schedule as well. So anyone battling addiction, drugs, alcohol, whatever you're addicted to, those classes are just about every day, and soon will definitely be every day. We also have some changes coming up in the schedule. Super excited. I filled in for a month. I did my best at doing loving kindness meditation, which is not easy for this guy. And so I was challenged last week to do a loving kindness meditation, and I pulled it off, I think. I don't know. But finally, that's done and behind me. And Bettina will start this Wednesday. She'll do a class every Wednesday now on the 4 foundations of mindfulness, 4 Brahma Viharas. I've known her 20 years since the old Buddhist temple we were at together. She's wonderful. She'll start Wednesdays. And Travis will no longer be leading as well. So Thursdays will continue as usual. We're going to change it a bit. And I'll have some people coming in to lead that. I might lead the first one. But then it'll be a beautiful, we'll circle up. We'll have a nice sharing discussion around Buddhist teaching. So that'll be Thursdays. And then at the end of the month, we're also going to open up on Sunday afternoons. Not certain on the time yet, but it'll be a 2-hour group, and it'll be probably about an hour and a half of just sitting. It'll be more of a zazen, zen seated meditation, silent, with maybe a 20 to 30 minute sharing and discussing on the Heart Sutra. So, since we see Tom again, we want to keep him satisfied with the Heart Sutra practice. So that'll be at the end of the month on Sundays. So thanks all. There's a list by the door. Day of silence, probably did a lot this morning cleaning. But if anybody wants to stick around, help out the garden or do anything, we appreciate it. So thank you all.